Hi there, I'm Dr. Christian Mostert from Kick-Ass Dissertations, and we are busy writing your research proposal. So this is section 6 of your research proposal, and it deals with your research questions. So just to provide you context here, this section follows section 5, which dealt with your research objectives. So your research objectives were the detailed objectives that you wanted to meet with your research study. Now we're dealing with the research questions relating to this. So if you think about it, these research questions have to be answered by your study in order to achieve the research objectives that were stated in the previous section. So essentially, for every research objective that you had in section 5, you're going to have one research question. So for instance, if you had 3 research objectives, you're going to have 3 research questions. Also, I just want to highlight early on for you that there's some difference between a research question and a hypothesis, and we'll touch upon it. Although the section's heading or the name is normally called research questions, although we sometimes see hypothesis as well. So let's look at the purpose and some detail to it. So the purpose of a research question is to develop the question version of the research objective. So it's very simple. You're going to develop the question version of the research objective. So they're going to sound very similar, but the one will be in terms of a statement that you want to achieve. That was the research objective. Now you're going to develop the question version for that, and it must have a question mark behind this sentence. So answering the question through your research will then result in the research objectives to be met. So it's really quite simple, but be careful that you don't get caught out. This can be a little tricky to develop sometimes. Good. So this is a very short section. In your first paragraph, essentially you're going to immediately start with a sentence to say that the research questions for this study is as follows, and then you're going to follow on that. So a good research question is essentially the guide to your dissertation's research, and it's going to help you to develop a clear focus of what needs to be done. Now I want you to think very carefully about this. The more clear the question, the easier it is going to be for you to develop your research later on to prove that or to answer the question. So all research will have at least one research question or hypothesis that have to be solved through your research. So there needs to be an answer to this to achieve your objective. So let's look at the difference between questions, research questions, and hypotheses. So research questions are generally used where an unknown phenomena is to be investigated. So the research question can be what has happened that some people get a virus? That's the question. Well, we don't know. We have actually no idea. And therefore, we need to investigate many areas to be able to answer this question. Whereas a hypothesis is something that you already generally know about. So there are already answers to that. And now you want to test it against some unknown variables. For instance, if you already know that there's a virus and you want to know, do males or females are more prone to get the virus, then you're going to have a hypothesis to test. And why? Well, it's already known that a virus happens to people, and subsequently you want to analyze it in terms of male and female. So that way it will be a hypothesis and not a research question. Also, just bear in mind that it is possible, and there are really many combinations with this, that a research question can be accompanied by a hypothesis. This is something that you need to develop with your supervisor. Also, the research question versus hypothesis application. So generally, quantitative studies will include a hypothesis to test. Remember, a quantitative study is one where you use statistics to analyze your data, And this is then very typically where you will see hypotheses being put forward, where you're going to test something. Is it true or is it not true? And then generally in qualitative studies, you're going to include research questions only, because the reason is that you're going to investigate something that is unknown. So there's some phenomena that you want to investigate. And therefore we generally see in qualitative studies that there won't be any hypothesis set for that. In mixed method studies, of course, can be a combination of both. So the length of this section 6, the research question, it is very short. It's a few paragraphs that refer to your research questions. No long stories or introductions to it. Master's degree, half to maybe 1 page, and a PhD, maybe also 1 page. So a very short section actually. So I want to encourage you to make sure that you use short, succinct sentences. So you don't want long stories with this. But use strong verbs as well that will reflect progressiveness. It's going to reflect action, outcomes, evidence. Remember, if you think about it, that is where you want your research questions to lead you. You want to get to a point where you really have a conclusion about something that you can act upon. So, and then just lastly, avoid questions with a yes/no answer. I don't think you will be allowed to do a dissertation if it's going to have a simple yes or no answer. So almost all dissertations will have a complex answer to the question instead of a singular yes/no answer.